Hi guys, I'm going to do one more in this series to kind of wrap it up from the other two. That was kind of the background story. So what I really want to touch base on, and which is why I'm doing these videos, is because I think it's horrible that the hospital is complicit and they continue this. Certainly I saw at the jail, certainly I see in my own life, and certainly I see with children continuing to be abused, that they get it wrong, and they certainly got it wrong with me, and they've certainly got it wrong with other people, and certainly the police do. So whether it's a lack of training, whether it's more resources, and certainly we see this with domestic violence, and we see it with victims that continue, they continue to get it wrong, okay? And certainly with me, because the people that actually need the help and the people that actually, are doing the violent things aren't being held accountable. My ex-husband repeatedly drank too much, I would say was alcoholic, had repeated DWIs. He never went for treatment. It would have been good for him to get some treatment, at least go to AA for 6 months. But this is what happens when you continue to let people go and let people go and let people go. And I've seen the same thing with my own mother. I've seen the same thing with other people in the family. They end up dying young. They're involved with drugs. My cousin was involved with drugs. He was a heroin addict. I mean, what would have life been if he would have gotten treatment sooner? Okay, then we went on to inappropriate sexual behaviors towards me. The stalking continued. He moved around the corner from me before he passed away at 60. Other kids in the family were visiting him, and so on and so forth. Other special needs children in the family. So the abuse for me started out very young. My mother was pregnant right away as soon as she left my father. She was under the care of this Dr. Pipito. I went to school with his daughter and her brother-in-law. I get it mixed up. A lot of people are related in Amsterdam, or they know each other. It's just ridiculous that I have to go through all this. And certainly, it's so abusive that I had to be denied all my assets while they laughed and joked, and, they had a good old time doing this stuff, and it's been horrible. So what I want to touch base on is how horrible it can be. I remember when we went to visit my cousin, he was living over there with his friends. He had just gotten divorced. He was a heroin addict. He wasn't even in treatment. She was having him repeatedly arrested. He lost everything. He had a good job at GE. He was doing well, but again, I don't want to tell his story. But then he ended up, continuing to use. I went to try to see him at the end of his life to say, what's going on? Why do you continue this? Because he had moved around the corner and he didn't want to talk to me. It seemed to me if he was in recovery, he would be able to talk a little bit and just stop the violence towards me. So I would like to continue to talk about it because people aren't getting the help they need. I certainly don't need to continue be the target of the smear campaign from this half family who's done this to me since I was a kid. And you can't really divorce your half family, but this idea that these blended families all just mesh people together and they all get along is a fallacy. And I've watched it growing up. These people are doing the same thing over and over. Then they get the police involved. They have relatives that are in the medical profession. So then they make up a bunch of stuff. And certainly this has been going on in my half family for a long time. And it was just me. I don't have, a lot of siblings. I have half siblings. My parents were divorced when I was young. The other side, my mother's family never really came around, although she stayed in contact. So the family was very divided when I was a child. So I had nobody except my grandmother, and she wasn't always there for me either. She tried to be a little bit, but she had her things too with her family. So I'm going to touch base on a little bit of this. And certainly you can grow up without mental health issues. Even though they'll sit around and they'll go on and on about, my sister-in-law did this all the time with special needs. Oh, you got these ACEs or these stereotypes. Certainly, if you grow up poor or you do have to be on welfare or you've had some of these services, doesn't mean you're mentally ill. And I'm not. Right now I do have anxiety from what they did and from all the denial of what went on and the inability to take some of this stuff seriously and stop twisting it around and blaming the victim. The victim blaming has been a big part of it for me, and this is why I'm speaking out, because it continues and there's other little kids in the family struggling, and I want them to know that I stood up and I said something, because for a long time I didn't, because I was told, don't talk about it, take the high road, forgive. And I'm at the point now where I can forgive some of this stuff too, but we do have to talk about it because people in the family do need to, and I'm a big one for talk therapy. The difference between, your mileage may vary, but certainly sometimes people just need somebody to talk to. And I said that at Hutchins. I said, Hutchins was out in Syracuse. They sent me out there. They were telling me that I had to wait 4 months for a court date. The lawyer says, oh, you're going to get time served for the broken string of Christmas lights. I'm like, all right, I've already been sitting here for 4 months. Now all of a sudden I get downstairs, you got to go to treatment. You got to go 4 months to Hutchins. I'm like, what? Excuse me? And these lawyers, they're just as bad in Amsterdam. It was ridiculous. She flat out lied. I talked to her on the phone. But to make a long story short, I ended up over at this Hutchins psych ward. It was another train wreck because these doctors are sitting around telling me, we're going to tell you how to think. I said, excuse me, I find that a little offensive. And it went downhill from there. They started writing up all this stuff that, they call it schizoaffective or you're schizophrenic or, and to take these things lightly is pretty egregious. I mean, I met some people that are actually struggling with being, I believe it's called a disease or a disorder. But people that are actually struggling with it, and it's a horrible thing condition or mental health issue to struggle with, and I met some people and they're honest about their condition for the most part, and they're on the meds and they're doing what they're supposed to do and they have their stories and so on and so forth. So the first place the law enforcement can clean up not getting it right is to stop calling people crack whores and crazy whores and hysterical and delusional when you report. Clean up your language a little bit. Using these kind of slurs when you're involved with the war on drugs or you're telling people you can't get it right with these mental illness response. Maybe if you start cleaning up the language a little bit and stop calling women crazy, that would be a simple, basic place to start. Because I'll tell you something, if you worked for me, you wouldn't be using that kind of language if I was your boss. Okay, you'd be either reprimanded or you'd be fired because people aren't crack whores. They're not crazy. People struggle with mental health issues. They struggle with drug addiction and so on and so forth. And maybe that's why a lot of people aren't going for treatment up in Gloversville because y'all stigmatize people that actually, I saw it at the jail. I've seen it at the hospital. I mean, and these people should know better. I see it with my half family that they're all involved in nursing and wanting in the medical field, and yet the slurs they use and the way they talk about people and the bullying, and maybe y'all can start there. So I'm a little over. So we'll continue. Be safe, guys.